It didn't happen at home. It didn't happen behind a slammed bedroom door or across a dinner table littered with half-finished plates. It didn't come in a whisper, or a scream, or one of those passive-aggressive silences that had become more common in our house than laughter. No, it happened at a neighborhood meeting, a quiet little gathering just outside Seattle. Folding chairs arranged in a half-circle. White paper agendas held down by coffee mugs. Cookie platters sweating under plastic wrap. Someone's dog barking down the street. Routine suburban drama. Road repairs, community security upgrades, how late the park lights should stay on. The kind of conversation I'd sat through a dozen times over the years, nodding politely while retirees argued over tree roots cracking the sidewalk. I was there because I always was, because I paid the dues, because I signed the checks, because I was the one who installed the damn motion lights when we got hit by package thieves last fall. I was standing beside Caroline, my wife legally, and her son Ethan. He was 17 now, tall, thinner than he used to be, that teenage mix of cocky and checked out, as if life was both beneath him and unfair to him all at once. I had raised him since he was 10. No, let me be accurate. I had supported him since he was 10. I'd paid for his braces. I'd taken him to weekend tournaments. I'd stood in the pouring rain during soccer games. He never once thanked me for attending. I built him a study desk by hand when he started high school, and he never used it. But I was there, always there, a quiet fixture. And at that meeting, I stood behind them like I always did, just behind, not quite next to. A habit that had grown out of convenience. Or maybe something more truthful. Something I didn't want to name until she did it for me. The topic was street paving. Someone had mentioned grant money, city contributions, neighborhood signatures, the usual mess of paperwork and patience. I said something, nothing major, just a suggestion about how we could pool the labor to reduce cost. That's when it happened. Caroline didn't look at me. Not really. Her tone didn't change. Her body didn't tense. She didn't flinch or soften or hesitate. She just spoke, like reading from a script. "He's not really part of this," she said. "We'll be making the decisions." I didn't respond. I didn't even breathe, because that sentence, calm, clipped, almost casual, wasn't directed at me. It was directed at the room, the people, the ones who had always smiled at me through hedges and waved from driveways. They nodded the way people do when someone clarifies a minor procedural detail. Not a single eyebrow raised. Not one sideways glance. The sentence settled over the group like fog, thin, harmless, and absolute. She didn't laugh after, didn't correct it, didn't walk it back. She just moved on. Like what she said had been fact, and everyone had always known it. Like I wasn't standing 5 feet away with my hands in my pockets and my name on the mortgage. And Ethan was standing beside her. Earbuds dangling from his collar, arms folded across his chest. He didn't even look up, didn't blink, didn't twitch. No defense, no discomfort. He just stood there, calm in the face of my erasure. And that silence said more than any sentence could. It told me everything I needed to know. Because silence in a family isn't neutral. Silence is a decision, posture. A sword left in its sheath but still sharpened, still chosen. He had heard what she said. He didn't challenge it. Didn't even pretend it wasn't meant to cut. That's when I realized. This wasn't an offhand comment. This wasn't a slip of the tongue or a misunderstanding. This was a policy, an agreement made somewhere I hadn't been invited. A family conference held behind a closed door I'd knocked on for years. Always knocking, never entering. That one sentence, "He's not really part of this," made everything clear. I was standing in a neighborhood I helped finance, next to a woman who shared my bed and a boy I had helped raise, and somehow I was a guest. An outsider. Someone tolerated, never truly included. People kept talking. The meeting resumed. Someone handed out updated permits. Someone made a joke about potholes. Caroline laughed. Ethan scrolled through his phone. And I stood there, smiling the way you smile at a joke you didn't hear, nodding at comments you didn't process. Because my brain had gone quiet. Not shocked, quiet. Like snow falling in the middle of a battlefield. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Anger comes when something surprises you. This didn't, because the cracks had always been there. I just hadn't wanted to see them. Not clearly. Not out loud. I remembered Christmas morning last year. Ethan opened the watch I bought him, mumbled thanks, and then immediately called his biological father. I remembered Caroline asking me not to make a big deal of it. He's still figuring things out, she'd said. Figuring me out, she meant. I remembered when Ethan's friend had called me Mr. Grant. Not Dad. Not even stepdad. Just a stranger's name. And Ethan didn't correct him. Didn't even notice. I remembered 1,000 little slights. 1,000 ways I had been kept just close enough to pay for everything, but never close enough to belong. And now, finally, Caroline had said it aloud, in public. In front of neighbors. In front of Ethan. He's not really part of this. Not, thank you for offering. Not, we'll talk about it later. Not even, let's discuss that as a family. Just a gentle, surgical exclusion. And Ethan didn't object. Didn't even blink. Because he had already been living by that rule. The meeting ended. People packed up their folding chairs, swapped leftover cookies, and drifted back to their homes. I shook hands, made small talk. I even smiled when someone thanked me for the holiday lights last year. Caroline and Ethan walked ahead of me to the car. I trailed behind quietly because that's what I was now. The quiet presence. The background figure. The man who didn't get a vote but still paid for the table. I sat in the driver's seat. She didn't look over. Ethan plugged in his phone, scrolling through his playlist. The engine purred. The meeting was over. But something in me had broken. Quietly, cleanly. And the worst part was how reasonable it all looked. How easy it was for her to say it. How natural it had become to pretend I wasn't part of their decisions. Not just today. Always. This wasn't an accident. It was a boundary. And Ethan's silence, still echoing in that space between us, was the final confirmation. I hadn't been excluded in a fit of emotion. I had been removed with precision. Like cutting the last wire from a circuit. Like lifting a weight from a shelf and quietly deciding not to replace it. Not with cruelty. Worse, with indifference. And that, I think, is what stays with me the most. Not the words, but the calmness in them. The way she didn't hesitate. The way he didn't react. The way I vanished, and no one even looked at the space I left behind. On the drive home, I didn't say a word. The car was filled with casual noise. Caroline tapping her phone, Ethan humming to whatever played through his earbuds. But I heard none of it. I watched the trees smear past the windshield. Evergreen silhouettes bent under a sky-threatening rain. My hands were on the wheel, but my mind had already exited. What played in my head wasn't the meeting. Not the folding chairs. Not the neighbors. Just her voice. He's not really part of this. And his silence. I've heard people say you don't notice the moment something breaks. That it's always after. After the vase shatters. After the door slams. After the damage. But they're wrong. Sometimes you feel it as it happens. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a shift. A faint snap somewhere behind the ribs. And you know, this is the line. And you've just crossed it. By the time we pulled into the driveway, I had already made the decision. No yelling. No demands. I wasn't going to confront Caroline, or lecture Ethan, or ask for an apology I knew would never come. Instead, I was going to do what they asked. What she said and what he silently agreed to. I was going to stop being a part of it. That night, while they ordered takeout and watched a movie, I went into the garage. I didn't take anything. I just stood there, staring at the projects I had started, the unfinished shelving, the sealed cans of driveway sealant, the labeled bins of electrical tools and spare wires. Evidence of plans I had made for this house. This family. I walked to the workbench and sat down. Then I opened my laptop. And I started logging out. Not of accounts. Of roles. The first was the contractor I had hired last fall. We'd been planning to redo the upstairs bathroom, install heated tile, fix the plumbing. Caroline had picked out the tile. Ethan had vetoed 2 designs. But the signature on the deposit? Mine. I emailed the contractor. Please remove my name from the account. All future coordination can go through Caroline Grant. No explanation, just clarity. Next was the solar application. I had spent hours getting the paperwork in order, gathering documents, dealing with rebates and estimates. It was my project, my idea. I withdrew my name from the city portal and forwarded Caroline the login info. Then came the insurance documents. I had recently added a rider to cover Ethan's new keyboard, the one he begged for last Christmas. I removed it, not canceled, just extracted myself. The rider stayed. My responsibility didn't. Then the HOA board. I had volunteered to lead the winter renovation committee. Another thankless title. I messaged the secretary. Please remove me from all current initiatives. I'll no longer be involved in decisions. Each step was quiet, mechanical, like turning off light switches in an empty house. I wasn't sabotaging anything. I wasn't destroying plans. I was simply stepping aside. After all, as Caroline had said, I wasn't really part of this. So let them run it. Let them carry the weight they claimed I never held. The next morning, Ethan asked if I could look at his laptop charger. It's shorting, he mumbled, dropping it on the kitchen table without looking up. I looked at Caroline. She was scrolling through emails, sipping coffee, already dressed for work. She didn't say anything. She didn't ask me to help. I picked up the charger, set it aside. I'm sure you'll figure it out, I said, my voice flat. Ethan blinked. He didn't respond. Neither did she. 2 days later, a letter from the contractor arrived. It was addressed to Caroline. She opened it in the hallway, confusion passing across her face. Why'd they take you off the account? She asked. I shrugged. You said I wasn't part of this. She stared at me. I stared back. No anger, no sarcasm, just the truth, given back to her in her own words. The silence stretched. Then she folded the letter, said nothing, and walked away. Continued like that. Death by removal. Little things at first. Tasks I used to handle, I stopped. I didn't remind Ethan about his tutoring schedule. I didn't refill the gas tank in Caroline's car when it dropped near empty. I didn't fix the bent gutter that had started pulling away from the roof. The list of undone things grew. Not in rebellion, not as punishment, but because apparently I wasn't in charge anymore. At dinner, Caroline mentioned that the city permit for the garage door expansion still hadn't gone through. You were working with them, right? She asked. I said calmly. She waited for more. I didn't give her any. That night, she logged into the portal herself. I heard her in the office, muttering at the interface, clicking through tabs. Then the sound of her pushing back from the desk with a sharp sigh. She never asked me for help. Not once. And that was part of the deal too. Let them live by the structure they built. Let them handle the weight without me. The first week passed. No one said much. The second week brought friction. The contractor emailed to say the renovation was stalled. Missing approvals, delayed coordination. Ethan's tutor reached out, asking why the payments had stopped. The city portal sent an automated rejection. The solar application had expired due to inactivity. Caroline's mood shifted, from distracted to tense. She brought it up one night while folding laundry. You just dropped everything? No, I said, folding my towel slowly. I stepped out of things I wasn't allowed to be part of. You know that's not what I meant, she said. No, I said again. It's what you said. She didn't answer. And Ethan? He stayed silent. Of course he did. Silence had always been his language, his weapon, his agreement, and now it became his curse. Because the house began to show signs of pressure. Not dramatic, but visible. Delays, miscommunication, costs. Things stopped working. Not broken, just unhandled. Because I had always been the invisible mechanism. The quiet force keeping everything in motion. And when I pulled back, the gears slipped. Not because I wanted them to, but because they were never mine to begin with. I just kept them oiled. And now I was gone from the system, the ghost they insisted I was. So I gave them what they asked for. My absence. Not a protest. Not a tantrum. just the slow, deliberate removal of presence. One responsibility at a time, one wire at a time, until the structure stood empty, just like they wanted. It didn't take long. Within a week, the holes I left behind began to widen. Quietly, methodically, the way floorboards give under years of hidden rot. Not all at once, just enough to make you pause when you step. The first sign came in the form of an email Caroline read over coffee. I was across the table, stirring mine slowly, watching her face as she scrolled through her inbox. Her lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't speak at first. She just blinked at the screen, reading it again, as if the words might change on the second pass. "The contractor's pulling out," she said finally. "No communication. He says he hasn't heard from anyone in weeks." I didn't look up. "That's true." Her voice sharpened. "You said you weren't canceling anything." "I didn't," I said. "I just stopped pretending I had a seat at the table." She stared at me, waiting for the real explanation, the one that would make her life easier. I didn't offer it. That night she tried to call him. The contractor left a voicemail full of careful language. "Sorry for the confusion. Must have been some miscommunication. We're still very much interested in moving forward." But it was too late. The man had moved on. A crew doesn't sit around waiting for a family that can't decide who's in charge. She told Ethan the next day. I overheard it from the hallway. "Well, you could have said something," she snapped at him. "You heard what I said at the meeting. You knew it didn't come out right." "I don't know," Ethan muttered. "I didn't think it mattered." Of course he didn't. That was the problem. To him, decisions didn't need weight until they affected his comfort. Until the walls shifted, or the internet lagged, or the roof started leaking in the corner of his room. And by then, it was always someone else's fault. But the house didn't run on apologies. It ran on presence, on maintenance, on signatures, mine, which meant now it didn't run at all. By week 2, the city permits expired. The solar plan I had shepherded for 3 months was officially shut down. No refunds, no appeal. We were bumped off the queue entirely. Caroline emailed the office. They responded bluntly. "Your application was inactive for 21 consecutive days. We moved to the next qualified household." She printed it out and left it on the kitchen table. I didn't touch it. She didn't ask. And Ethan? Still silent. Still scrolling. Still pretending none of this had anything to do with him. Until it did. The third week brought the neighbors. Started with a text from Greg, the guy 2 doors down. Friendly tone but probing. "Hey man, heard the solar application got bounced. Everything okay? We were gonna piggyback on your deal with the installer. Now it's a mess." Then Julie, from across the street. "Did you still want me to drop off the documents for the neighborhood speed bump proposal? You were our point person, right?" And the worst, Mrs. Dyer, the HOA chair. She stopped me on the curb while I was taking out the trash. "You dropped off the winter committee?" she asked, squinting at me like I was a puzzle missing a corner. "You were leading the funding proposals. Why'd you pull out?" I smiled. Polite, cold. Didn't feel like I had the authority anymore. She laughed, confused. "Of course you do. You're one of the few who shows up." I shrugged. "Not according to my wife." She paused, then shifted awkwardly. "I see." She didn't ask anything else. That silence was the first real sign Caroline had begun to notice the weight of her words. Not because I told her, but because other people started asking her questions, the kind I used to field, buffer, absorb. And now they were hers to answer. And she didn't like it. Her frustration turned inward. Muted but visible. She started cooking less. Asking Ethan to run errands he ignored. She stopped smiling when I walked into a room. But she didn't speak the truth, not once. Because to speak it would be to admit it. That she had removed the foundation and expected the roof to float. One morning, the mailbox held a letter from the city. A formal notice. Failure to comply with permit deadlines. Loss of residential credit. The language was bureaucratic, but the meaning was simple. We had wasted time and money. She set it on the kitchen table again, like a child hoping someone else would do her homework. I made breakfast, ate in silence. She watched me, said nothing. Even Ethan started to notice. His world had always been curated, predictable, padded. But now things were falling through. His tutor canceled a session due to non-payment. He missed a weekend workshop because Caroline forgot to register him. On Saturday morning, he stood in the kitchen, bowl of cereal in hand, and said, "Didn't you say you were going to fix the closet light?" "I was going to," I replied, "when I was still part of this." He blinked. "Seriously?" I didn't look up. "That's what your mother said." He didn't answer, just stood there, the silence finally turning back on him. A mirror. And that's when I saw it. The first flicker. Not guilt. Not apology. Awareness. The realization that things didn't just happen around him. That comfort was constructed, and I had been the architect. He left the kitchen without another word. The week after, Caroline finally cracked. It happened late one evening. We were folding laundry again. Another quiet ritual turned battleground. She was pairing socks. I was stacking shirts. And out of nowhere, she spoke. "You're really not involved anymore?" I folded one more shirt, set it on the pile, then turned to her. "You said I wasn't part of this." I listened. I accepted the rules. Her face faltered, just for a moment. Then, "That's not what I meant." "It's exactly what you meant," I said calm. And Ethan didn't disagree. He didn't even blink. That's how I knew it wasn't a mistake. She looked down at the socks in her hands, as if they could offer her a way out. I continued. I didn't walk away. I was walked out. With silence. With complicity. With the ease of people who think they'll never lose the thing they keep stepping on. She didn't cry. Caroline never cried. She just went still. Because she finally understood what I had done. I hadn't punished them. I had simply stopped. No ceremony. No tantrum. Just removal. And the weight of my absence had done what years of sacrifice never could. It had made me visible. Because now, every broken thing, every stalled plan, every neighbor's disappointment, every deadline missed and opportunity lost. All of it pointed back to the same hollow space. The one I used to fill. Quietly. Consistently. And Ethan? He learned too. Not in words. Not through lecture. But through cost. He learned that silence is not neutrality. It's choice. And every choice has a price. I moved out in silence. No fight. No slammed doors. No suitcase dragged across hardwood. Just a slow, deliberate gathering of what was mine and nothing more. A few shirts. My tools. A folder of documents I'd kept in a locked drawer for years. Titles, receipts, statements, evidence. The things I carried were light compared to what I left behind. There was no dramatic announcement. No "I'm done" shouted into the void. I didn't give Caroline the satisfaction of begging me to stay or the burden of pretending she was surprised. I didn't even tell Ethan goodbye. Why would I? He had never said hello. The morning I left, Caroline stood in the hallway in her robe. She must have heard me take the keys from the bowl near the front door. She didn't speak at first. Just leaned against the frame, arms folded, face blank. But her eyes, they weren't blank. They were searching. For what? An argument? A final explanation? Some crumb of anger to cling to? I gave her nothing. "Where are you going?" she asked. I zipped the bag, lifted it. Somewhere my name still carries weight. That was it. I walked past her. The front door clicked shut behind me. She didn't follow. I didn't expect her to. You see, I'd already left months before that morning. I'd left the night she opened her mouth and erased me. I'd left the moment Ethan's silence rang louder than any insult. I just hadn't taken my body with me yet. It's strange, the way people treat you when they think you'll never leave. They build their lives around your labor, your patience, your silence. And when you finally extract yourself, it feels like the floors vanished beneath them. But it was never their floor to stand on. It was yours. And now it's gone. I moved to a different state. Not far. But far enough that no one could drop by. Far enough that my phone stopped buzzing with logistical questions disguised as apologies. I got a small place. 1 bedroom. No lawn to mow. No roof to patch. No stepson to remind me I didn't belong. And for the first time in years, I could hear myself think. They tried, of course. At first, Caroline sent messages. Careful ones. We're figuring things out. Let's talk soon. Ethan's had a hard time with this. I didn't respond, because they weren't questions. They were bait. Then came the practical inquiries. Do you have the code to the contractor's lockbox? Where did you store the irrigation plants? What account was the tutoring app tied to? Each one revealed the truth more than any apology could have. They needed me, but they had never respected me. Ethan didn't reach out. Not right away. Took a month. Then, one afternoon, a short message appeared in my inbox. No greeting. No punctuation. Just, I get it now. That was it. I stared at it for a long time. Let it sit there like a wounded animal on my porch. I didn't write back. Because understanding isn't enough. Awareness without change is just regret wrapped in self-pity. Let him sit with that. Let him feel the cold edge of the world without me softening it. I kept to myself. Got a job at a small contractor firm. Nothing big. But I worked with my hands again. Poured concrete. Framed walls. Repaired things that deserved repair. I started to sleep through the night. No more listening for footsteps in the hallway. No more waiting for the quiet sound of Caroline whispering on the phone with her mother, updating her on how I wasn't connecting with Ethan. No more gut-tightening walks through the living room while they watched TV without making space for me. The space I lived in now was mine. Entirely mine. It was clean. Not tidy clean. Free of false roles. Free of silence weaponized as agreement. They reached out less over time. I could feel it. The hope thinning in their messages. The realization sinking in. Not that I had left, but that I wasn't coming back. Caroline finally asked weeks later if we could talk. I think we all misunderstood each other, she wrote. Misunderstood? She had stood in front of a neighborhood beside her son and said clearly, precisely, that I was not part of the family decisions. And when the consequences followed, she called it a misunderstanding. That's the problem with people like Caroline. They think words are just air. That sentences don't weigh anything until you're forced to carry them. But I did carry them. Quietly. For years. And now, she was learning what happens when the man doing all the lifting walks away. The last time Ethan reached out, it wasn't a message. It was a letter. Printed. Signed. He apologized. Said he didn't understand what he had. That he didn't realize what I was doing behind the scenes. That it wasn't personal, that he was just angry at his real dad, that I was in the blast radius. I read it twice, then I folded it, placed it in a drawer and didn't respond. Because here's the truth. You don't get to spit on someone and then complain about the stain. You don't get to burn the bridge and act surprised when you're stranded. And you don't get to call a man not my father and expect him to behave like one when the rent's due. They tried to rewind the clock. But I wasn't a VHS tape to be rewound. I was the structure, and they had torn me down. Now they could sit in the rubble and figure out which pieces still mattered. I heard through a mutual friend that the renovation never happened. The solar plan lapsed. The permit expired. The bathroom stayed unfinished. Ethan's tutoring fell apart. He barely passed 2 classes. Caroline's voice got quieter in the neighborhood meetings. She had stepped into the role she said was hers, and she wore it like a costume that didn't fit. Some nights, I think about the hallway, the exact place I stood when Caroline said those words in front of the neighborhood. The angle of Ethan's face as he stared at the pavement. The way no one looked at me, not even once. And I wonder what they'd say now. If they'd still nod in quiet agreement. If they'd still pretend it was a small thing. Or if they've realized, finally, that small things are what families are made of. And destroyed by. There's no dramatic ending to this. No reunion. No final confrontation. Just a shift. A clean, silent break from the life I built for people who never asked how it was built. They didn't chase me. They just slowed down. The bills stacked up. The support cracked. And the man they called nobody was no longer there to catch the falling pieces. And I don't feel guilty. Not because I stopped caring, but because I cared too much, too long, in a place that never cared back. Some people think you need permission to walk away, but you don't. You just need a reason, and silence is reason enough. So now I live with peace. Not joy peace. The kind that comes when you finally stop begging to be included in a story you're already writing. And I'll leave you with this. Was I cruel? Or did I finally learn to listen? Was I wrong to leave? Or were they wrong to assume I never would? Tell me. If you had been erased slowly, politely, by the people you carried, would you have stayed? Or would you have done what I did, and walked out before you vanished completely?